Rudo is an ugly, broke, and friendless boy who spends most of his time rummaging through the trash in the rich part of town. One day, he notices a rich lady discard a trash bag with a perfectly good doll in it, and he wants it. So he heads down to the trash collection site and sneaks into one of the garbage rooms so he can start looking for any valuables. However, he was a bit too sloppy with his approach because he gets spotted by one of the guards, and the people here must take their trash very seriously because the guard immediately runs in there and draws his gun on Rudo. Only authorized personnel are allowed to be in here. And once he realizes that Rudo is a trash raider, the guard sounds the alarm to call for reinforcements. Rudo doesn't plan to stick around any longer, so he jumps into the trash chute and climbs his way back up so he can get out of here. But the lockdown sequence has already been initiated, so just as he was about to escape, the front gate gets sealed off. The guards eventually catch up to Rudo, and as soon as they have a clear line of sight, they open fire without hesitation. All because they don't want him looking through their trash. As the shots are heading straight for Rudo, he locks in and begins moving so fast that he is able to dodge the bullets point blank. But keep in mind, the guards had no idea he could move fast enough to dodge bullets, so they genuinely wanted to kill him over trash. Rudo manages to slip through one of the open doors and runs out into the loading area while the guards continue shooting at him. At one point, he gets grazed on the arm by a bullet, but he is still able to make it over the wall to escape the trash collection compound. The guard continues chasing after him, but Rudo manages to stay hidden in the sewer system until the coast is clear. But he doesn't understand why they are willing to go so far to stop him from going through the trash when he isn't hurting anyone. Morning comes and people all over the city have heard the news of the recent trash raid, and they are appalled at the idea of the dirty tribesfolk going through the stuff they've thrown away. In this city, the people are divided into two sections: the city dwellers who live in the clean and pristine part of town, and then there's the tribesfolk who live in the filthy part of town. The news of the trash raid is a hot topic here as well, but everyone in this part of town already knows Rudo must have been behind it. Mostly because he is currently fixing up all the junk he collected last night. A few moments later, Rudo is confronted by his friend Chua, and she yells at him for going trash raiding again. The city folk are really strict about their trash management, so there's no telling what they'd do to Rudo if they ever caught him in the act. Rudo understands that what he did was risky, but he doesn't think it's fair how the rich and wealthy are always throwing away things that are still perfectly usable. Plus, selling the fixed junk helps him cover his living expenses out here. Thus then, a group of guys show up, and they immediately start insulting Rudo unprovoked. They tell Chua that she shouldn't hang around a loser like him so much, and Rudo is doing his best to stay calm, but they keep pushing his limits. One of them even knocks over the lantern that Rudo was fixing and tells him no one is ever going to buy something that was touched by Rudo's filthy hands. After all, they say he's the son of a homicidal maniac. Rudo has been trying to ignore their insults for a while now, but that last comment about his father really struck a nerve with him. The boys keep talking and explain that these slums were originally created as a prison for criminals, and now as the children of those criminals, all of them have to be on their best behavior in hopes of redeeming themselves and being allowed to rejoin the city. But people like Rudo's father screwed up for everyone by going on a killing spree. The boy has been talking a lot of shit for someone within drop-kicking range, and that last statement officially crossed the line, so Rudo stares at him with a look that means he's about to crash out. Yi and Rudo look at them with such animosity scares them so bad that they realize it'd be a bad idea to keep messing with him, so they all just slowly walk away. Once they are gone, Rudo silently goes to pick up the lantern that they kicked over since he's used to getting ridiculed for no reason, but to his surprise, Chua is still standing by his side. She even tells him she believes he's a good person, and that's the nicest thing anyone has ever said to him, so he doesn't know how to react. Just then, Chua notices the toy that Rudo fixed up, and she absolutely loves it. She's impressed that Rudo was able to find something so cute in the trash and fix it up. The whole reason Rudo went after the doll in the first place was to give it to Chua as a present, so he is happy to hear that she likes it, but before he could explain that it's a gift, Chua's mother shows up and tells her it's time to go home. Chua gets up and says goodbye to Rudo before walking home with her mother, and Rudo is disappointed that he missed his chance to confess. After that, Rudo heads home too, but as soon as he gets inside, he finds Recto standing there with a wide smile on his face. He was spying on Rudo earlier, so he looks him dead in the eyes and repeats Rudo's failed confession word for word. Rudo gets flustered and yells that spying on his private moments isn't cool, but that aside, Recto wants to talk about that little trash raid stunt Rudo pulled last night. Recto admits that they are poor, but they aren't poor enough for Rudo to need to risk his life looking for valuable junk. Rudo insists that it's not that risky since he has never been caught before, but Recto points out that Rudo was spotted last night and he nearly got captured. Recto understands that Rudo is only trying to pay him back for everything he has done for him since they aren't related by blood, but as far as Recto is concerned, Rudo is his son, so he doesn't need to pay him back for anything. Recto found Rudo abandoned as a baby and took him in as his own, and he has always known that Recto saw him as family, so it's not like he feels guilty or anything. He just wanted to show some respect by helping him out a little as family. Just then, Recto spots the wound on Rudo's arm and asks if he got shot yesterday. Rudo tries to deny it, but it's obvious that his arm is injured, so Recto tells him to roll up his sleeve so he can treat it. And while he's at it, he says he will change the bandages on Rudo's arm. Once he is done treating Rudo's wound, he reminds him to stay away from the trash site from now on because next time he might not be lucky enough to come out of it with minor injuries. Rudo assures Recto that he really is fine because compared to the wounds that his biological father left him with, a little scratch on his shoulder isn't a big deal. The mood shifts as soon as Rudo mentions his father because it's not a fun topic to discuss. In this city, major crimes are punished with an immediate death sentence and offenders are dropped into the pit without a second thought. Rudo's father was thrown into the pit for the crimes he committed, and Recto doesn't want the same to happen to Rudo, so he asks him to be more careful from now on. Rudo's hands have been pitch black for as long as he can remember, and as if that wasn't bad enough, he occasionally gets episodes of crippling pain from them. People have always looked at him with disdain upon seeing his injury, but Recto was different. He gave Rudo a set of gloves that helped manage the pain he felt, and Rudo has treasured them ever since. All that aside, Recto tells Rudo that he had better make a move on Chua soon, otherwise someone else might win her over before he gets the chance to confess, but Rudo really doesn't want to talk about that right now. But while Recto and Rudo are busy bickering inside, a mysterious masked man is standing outside and staring at their house ominously. The next morning, Rudo is trying to learn to smile since Recto told him it would make him more approachable, but after practicing for a few minutes, Rudo realizes he's just plain ugly, so no amount of smiling is going to help. However, he does still want to give Chua the doll, so he decides to head over to her house. On his way, he thinks about the pit and how it is considered a huge trash dump both literally and figuratively. All the city's trash is thrown in there, and anyone caught committing a crime and deemed useless to society ends up in there as well. Public executions are held like this fairly often, but Rudo has always wondered what actually happens when someone is sent down there. Just then, Chua happens to show up and she thinks it's awful how people get thrown into the pit all the time. From what she has heard, the slums were built on the edge of the city specifically to remind all the tribus folk that if they step out of line, then they'll be thrown in the pit without question. Everyone who lives here has no choice but to watch as more and more people get thrown in there, but Chaiwa really doesn't want that to happen to him. She understands that he doesn't agree with how the rich people waste perfectly good stuff, but if he continues putting himself in danger like that, then it will only be a matter of time before he gets caught. Rudo laughs a little because Recto said the same thing to him last night in Chua. That's probably because Recto loves Rudo just as much as she does. Rudo continues laughing for a second, but then it dawns on him that Chua just said she loves him, and as soon as Chua realizes what she said, she gets flustered and starts trying to explain that she didn't mean it in a weird way. This is the best chance Rudo is ever going to get, so he holds out the doll and tells Chua that he got this for her because he thought she might like it. Chua is overjoyed by the thoughtful gift and tells Rudo that she'll treasure it forever, but this went way better than Rudo expected, so he isn't sure how to react right now. He eventually decides to run off before his ugly face makes Chua change her mind, and now that he has finally made progress, he wants to go home and tell Recto all about it. However, as he is running around the corner, he accidentally bumps into a bunch of guards from the inner city, and they barely even acknowledge his existence before walking past him like a piece of trash. Apostles showing up in the slums is never a good sign, but right now, Rudo couldn't care less about that because he needs to go brag to Recto about his love life. He eventually makes it home, but as soon as he opens the door, to his absolute horror, he finds the masked man with a sword plunged into Recto's chest. The masked man pauses for a moment out of surprise at Rudo's sudden appearance, but then he goes back to what he was doing and pushes the sword deeper into Recto's chest. Rudo refuses to let Recto die in front of him, so he tries fighting the masked man off, but in less than a second, he ends up slammed against the wall and barely able to move. He got beaten so badly that he doesn't even remember how it happened, and the masked man is barely even acknowledging Rudo as a threat. He is fairly certain that Recto won't survive now, so the masked man slowly gets up and begins walking out the door. Rudo doesn't want to let him get away, so he yells at the murderer to stop, but that doesn't work, so he tries mustering up as much strength as he can so he will be able to chase after him. However, he suddenly hears Recto trying to speak, and helping Recto takes priority over getting revenge right now, so Rudo rushes over to his side. He tries to assure Recto that he will get help, but there's not much that can be done when you've got a sword sticking out of your chest, so Recto grabs his shirt and tells him to get out of here as fast as he can. Rudo doesn't understand why Recto would say that, but a moment later, he gets shot in the back by a taser and is pinned to the ground by the city guards. They accuse him of murdering Recto, and no matter how much Rudo tries to explain that he isn't the one who was responsible for this, they refuse to listen to him, and one of them even punches Rudo until he goes unconscious. By the time Rudo wakes up, he finds himself tied to the execution stand dangling over the pit, while an apostle condemns him for a crime he didn't commit. The people of the slums already didn't like Rudo, so many of them oppose his execution. But Rudo is left wondering how things could have ended up this way. He didn't do anything wrong, yet dozens of people are currently yelling for his execution. He looks out into the crowd, pleading for someone to believe that he is innocent, but all the faces he sees are looking at him with nothing but contempt. He then spots Choa, and she may be the only one who would ever believe in his innocence, so he tries calling out to her and explaining that he wasn't the one who killed Recto. He asks her to help find the real killer so he can prove his innocence, but Chuva cuts him off, and she says she was a fool to ever believe that someone like Rudo could be more than a filthy murderer, and now she wants nothing to do with him ever again. As Rudo watches Chua walk away from him, he realizes that he is truly alone now. But then, just as he is about to be dropped, he sees a familiar face in the crowd. The face of the man who killed Recto, and in that moment, he swears to himself that he's going to kill that guy along with all the people who turned their backs on him. The next time Rudo opens his eyes, he finds himself laying in a pile of trash and obviously stinks, but he is more surprised that he's still alive down here since he thought the pit was supposed to be a death sentence. He looks up and sees vast expanses of wastelands as far as the eye can see, but then he hears a loud rumbling sound coming from behind him. And when he turns around to see the giant trash monster staring him down, he realizes this isn't just a regular pit. This is hell. Rudo starts running for his life, but the trash monster calls for backup, and within moments he is surrounded by two more of them. He is still struggling to believe what he's seeing because since when could giant piles of trash come to life and attack you? However, the situation is very real, and the human skull he finds on the ground shows him exactly what's going to happen to him if he doesn't act quickly. Just then, the trash pile below Rudo's feet gives way, so he falls to a lower level, and that fall really hurt. The wind was knocked out of his lungs when he hit the ground, but the air here smells worse than a moldy gym bag, so he can barely breathe. He realizes he needs to find somewhere to hide before the monsters get to him. But after looking around, there's literally nothing but trash here, so there's no safe place. Rudo is starting to lose hope and believes he's going to end up dying no matter what he does. But then he remembers what Recto had said to him before he died, and Rudo refuses to let himself die before he has made them all pay for what they did. The people who looked down on him as trash, the cowards that watched as he was thrown into the pit, and most of all, the bastard that killed Recto in cold blood. One of the trash monsters tries to sneak attack Rudo while he's mid-monologue, but he's filled with so much rage that he smacks the monster's head away with a metal pipe. Meanwhile, on a nearby trash pile, a man spots Rudo on the other side of the trash field, and he is curious about him. Rudo is doing his best to fight back against the monsters, but his metal pipe isn't doing much damage to their trash bodies, so he gets swatted away and bounces off the floor multiple times. Eventually, he gets his hands on a broken stop sign, so he chucks it at the trash monster and he manages to do some decent damage to it. But with all the toxic air here, Rudo can't keep fighting like this forever. The two trash monsters see that Rudo is struggling to get back up, so they both decide to charge at the same time. However, just before they could hit him, Rudo grabs a piece of sheet metal, and with it, he slices one of the trash monsters clean in half, resulting in a huge trash explosion. Rudo is relieved that he was able to take down the trash monster, but unfortunately, it's not over yet because another trash monster spawns right in front of him, and this one is much bigger than the others, so Rudo has no choice but to run for his life. The monster slams into the ground, and Rudo is sent flying before landing right in front of the man who was watching him. He is confused upon first seeing the man, but he still can't breathe properly with the stench in the air, so the man picks him up, kicks him across the floor for no reason, and then puts a gas mask on Rudo's face. At first, Rudo is mad, but then he realizes he can actually breathe now, so we should be grateful. He turns to the man and thanks him for his help, but he has a few questions about this place, like where they are, what those monsters are, and is everywhere else like this as well. All very valid questions, but the mysterious man just tells Rudo to shut his mouth and be quiet. Rudo doesn't understand why the man doesn't want to answer his questions, so he starts yelling that he needs answers. He just got tossed down here and has no idea what this place is, so he refuses to be quiet until the man gives him some answers. All Rudo's yelling pisses the man off, so he starts yelling back at him. He says this place is one of the many toxic dumps that spirits like Rudo created, and he would have explained that eventually, but Rudo couldn't keep his damn mouth shut, so now they've got to deal with those things again. The man explains that those are trash beasts, monsters made of trash that can't be harmed with normal weapons, and they react to sound. So Rudo's yelling basically sounded the dinner bell for all the trash beasts in the area. The trash beasts in this area are particularly bad, so the man was hoping to avoid drawing their attention, but it's too late for that now. Energy begins to flow from the man's arms into the umbrella he's holding, and right before Rudo's eyes, the umbrella changes its form. So as the trash monster attacks, the man uses the umbrella to shred it to pieces. Rudo is in disbelief at the fact that the man was able to destroy the trash monster so easily, but there are a lot more where that came from, so he's still got a lot of work ahead of him. The man prepares to charge, and within seconds, he's able to take down a dozen or so trash beasts like it's nothing. Rudo is amazed by what he has just witnessed, and he is curious as to why that umbrella is so powerful, because if he was able to do damage like that on his own, he could finally make all those jerks in the city regret what they did. One of the trash monsters begins vomiting up some putrid purple goo, and the man can tell that it's not a good idea to touch it, so he uses his umbrella to parry the spray before driving the umbrella straight through the monster's head. Once the man is done, he goes back over to Rudo to check on him, and he takes off his mask to introduce himself. He says his name is Engine and he is a cleaner, but he immediately regrets taking his mask off because the air still smells awful. Moments later, Rudo passes out from exhaustion because of all the damage he suffered earlier, and while he's unconscious, he recalls an old memory of his time with Recto. When Rudo was younger, he returned home one day covered in mud, so Recto asked him what happened, and he explains that he had been pushed into the dirt by some kids. All he did was tell them that objects are alive because if you take care of them for long enough, a soul will come and live in them. But the kids just laughed and started picking on him after that. Rubita learned that story from Recto, so he feels bad that repeating it got Rudo in trouble, because stories like those are usually just made up. But Recto does believe that objects can have souls. Rudo lights up after hearing this and asks if that means all the stuff in the room has a soul as well, and Recto says anything can have a soul. Even the gloves that Rudo is wearing can have a soul as long as he cherishes them. Rudo later wakes up and finds himself being dragged across the floor by Engine. He starts yelling demands to know why Engine chained him up, so Engine reminds Rudo that he's still a total stranger, and there's no way Engine is bringing a stranger back to base without taking some precautions first. Rudo starts squirming around a lot and tells Engine to let him go because he needs to get back to the city as soon as possible, but Engine tells him that it isn't possible right now. The place Rudo calls the city is called the Sphere down here, and it kind of moves around a lot in the sky, so it's difficult to keep track of where it is. There's also the fact that Rudo isn't able to fly, so he'd never be able to get back up there in the first place. There are other factors as well, but the point here is that for now, Rudo is stuck down here, so he should just stay quiet and deal with it. However, Rudo refuses to give up because nothing's going to stop him from getting revenge on those pricks in the sphere. Earlier, Engine said Rudo was stuck for now, meaning there must be some way to get up to the sphere after all, and Rudo wants to know what that is. He asks Engine to tell him everything there is to know about this place and how to leave, because he's not going to shut up until Engine fills him in. Engine is getting sick of all of Rudo's constant yelling, so he tells him that if he's so desperate to find out what kind of place the surface is, then he's going to get a first-hand lesson. Engine continues driving Rudo until he eventually arrives at an old service station with 2 trucks out front. Engine then drops Rudo off and wishes him luck before leaving him there to fend for himself. Just then, Rudo spots 5 men staring at him, and they all seem astonished by the sight of him. They think the clothes on Rudo's body are strange, so they begin speculating that he might be a spirit, but just to be sure, they ask Rudo where he came from. Rudo tells them that he fell from the place they call the Sphere, and as soon as he says this, all the men take off their masks in surprise because they've never seen a living spirit before. They still find it hard to believe that a spirit managed to survive that kind of fall, but judging by the way Rudo's face looks, he's got to be telling the truth. Rudo doesn't like the fact that a bunch of random men are touching his face, so he pulls away, and the men apologize for being rude, but they don't see people like Rudo often, so they got a little excited. Anyway, the leader can see that Rudo must be uncomfortable in those chains, so he offers to change them for him, and Rudo thinks he is actually pretty nice, but unfortunately, things didn't end the way Rudo thought they would. He ends up chained up in the back of their truck instead, and the men start joking about how dumb it was for Rudo to trust them when he has no idea who they are. As the chains are tightened, the leader reminds the others to be careful with him because they wouldn't want to damage their latest product. Spirits fetch a high price around here, but it's mostly just spirit bodies that are sold. Eyes, fingers, and even spirit clothes go for a high price, but the leader never could have imagined that he would find a living spirit. He'd assure that Rudo must be wondering why people are willing to pay so much for spirits, so he tells him that it's because all the people on the surface despise the spirits. All they ever do is dump their trash on the people here. And it just keeps building and building until it turns the air into poison. It even creates monsters down here, so the spirits are practically slaughtering the surface dwellers with all the trash they dump down here. So once the people here find out that Rudo is one of the spirits, it's not going to be good for him. He may get tortured, torn apart, or maybe someone will even bust out the baby oil, but the leader doesn't care what happens to Rudo either way because he's going to make a lot of money selling him to the highest bidder. But before that, he wants to get a little payback of his own, so he starts shoving trash down Rudo's mouth. He thinks Rudo must have been living a sheltered life up in the sphere, so being forced to eat trash like this should break his spirit. But while he is shoving a piece of trash down Rudo's throat, Rudo bites down on his fingers and rips the flesh right off the bone. The leader jumps back in pain, but Rudo keeps chewing the flesh and even swallows. Back in the slums, Rudo was forced to eat trash like this all the time, so nothing has changed for him. Even the discrimination is the same here because no matter where Rudo goes, people will always look for a reason to treat him like garbage. He's sick of it. He rips himself out of the chains, and right now, Rudo has lost all sense of reason, so the only thing in his mind is murder. Engine has been watching the whole thing unfold from a cliff nearby, and he is impressed by what he sees Rudo is capable of. Rudo recalls what Recto told him about how taking care of something long enough will grant it a soul, but as Rudo grabs the chain floating in front of him, it begins to glow red, shocking the scavengers. On the surface, there are special people like Engine who are able to give life to objects to draw out their full power, and Rudo is one of them. The chain he was holding transforms, so the other scavengers are cautious about attacking him, but the leader reminds them that even if Rudo is a giver, as long as they get that chain away from him, he won't be able to use his powers anymore. The scavengers manage to knock the chain out of Rudo's hand, but that doesn't stop him because Rudo just grabs a nearby tire instead and uses it to beat the crap out of all of them. The last one left is the leader, and there's nothing he can do to stop Rudo, so he resorts to insulting him over and over again. But that just makes him even angrier, so Rudo is about to end him on the spot, but at the last second, Engine comes down and stops him. Rudo finally snaps out of it, and the tire he was using crumbles to dust moments later. Rudo has no idea what just happened or how he did all that, but he has a feeling that it has something to do with his gloves. Engine apologizes for ditching Rudo here, but he had to see what Rudo is capable of, and now that he knows Rudo is a giver, he wants to offer him a deal. He will tell Rudo anything he wants to know, and in exchange, Rudo will have to come work with him and the rest of the cleaners. But after everything that has happened, Rudo is done trusting people, so he tells Engine nope. This was the end of episode 2. Subscribe to not miss the next part.